What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bet Boys, your one-stop shop for all your energy drink reviews and performance talks. I'm Christian,
I'm Brian.
and today we got another banger as always. Got some good topics lined up. Brian has a pretty fire drink, if I do say so myself, which is good because I'm just rocking with some coffee here. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's pretty exclusive, as he would say. So you want to share with the group?
Yes, I have a. Hello, my name is Brian. I'm an energy drinkaholic.
Honestly, though, we at this point, that's what we need.
Yeah. Today, I got a new release that is absolutely outstanding. The Raspberry Cream Ghost Energy can looks great. It's a lot like the Orange Cream or like the Orange Dream, but it's even better because it's not orange and vanilla. It's that like raspberry and vanilla type cream, little ice cream bar on the front of that. So I'm just, it's the Ghost formula. It's the Ghost look. It's a printed can. It's not a screen filled can. I just,
Ooh.
It's crazy because it's like the first taste you get is like cream soda, but a light cream soda. And then it goes raspberry. And then it goes cream. And then it goes raspberry. And then it goes cream. Like it's like
Alternating.
Like if it was like a swirl, you know what I mean? It's not like the orange one where it's like, oh, orange finished with vanilla.
Yeah.
It's like raspberry cream. It's so good. Like right off the bat, like the both the cream and the raspberry are very light. They're subtle. Like neither one of the two is gonna just like punch you in the mouth and like try to steal the show. That just works in harmony together. It's semi-sweet, so like if you think about it, it's not gonna be like the sour. I mean, it's definitely not gonna be like the sour green apple or anything like that, where it's super sour or whatever. But I mean, to the extent of like you get through a little bit and you're like, I don't know if I can finish the whole can. This is like, it's one of those flavors. You know what it really reminds me of? Not in taste, but in like a flavor profile type of thing, is like the black cherry vanilla Gorilla Mind, to where you're like, I could just gas one of these every day because it's not like such an overpowering flavor that you're like, oh, that's a one-off thing, but it's also a great formula, etc., to where you're not like, this is the one drink I'm going for. It's just so solid. I don't know what I'm going to give it as a full review yet, because I will admit I had this off camera this previously in this week, and I was all in on it. And I'm going through some internal battles right now with Ghost because as we've talked about on here, I am a sour pink lemonade was my perfect 10. It was my perfect 10. I have yet to review my new perfect 10. So I have to retroactively bump sour pink lemonade down to 9.9, which I feel like should be illegal, but I have to do it strictly because it's just these other
yourself.
You can't. They're coming out with bangers, and that's a banger, and I know bangers. But there's one flavor that always has my heart, no matter where we go, no matter what we do. There's one flavor, and for anyone who is a smart person, and you might get this, I'm going to give you a little hint on that flavor. I'm going to give you the colors of light brown and yellow. I don't know what that is.
Stay tuned.
But in honor of Ghost, I'm gonna do something here. I'm gonna switch my hat.
Wow. Oh, is that a new hat, or have you had that? I always seen the green one.
Oh, I've had this one, yeah.
Okay, dude, I need to step up my game. I'm not a huge hat guy normally, but I fuck with the Ghost hats. They look pretty solid.
Shout out D Dang back in the day when I worked at GNC. He was like the regional sales rep. guy would hook us up with some good gear, came through, free samples that probably never made it to the actual public.
Yeah, you probably had some crazy flavors that they never even ended up like
we
putting into
knew
mass production.
we knew about like sour, like when the Warhead sour green apple pre-workout and sour watermelon, like we knew about that from like the sticks that were like single serve packets before it got like released to the public. So like and then people didn't want them, which is what was crazy because they like in our GNC store, like we were kind of in the we were literally right next to like the downtown like banking system in Minneapolis. So like the guys didn't want that. They all wanted testosterone boosters because it was a bunch of dudes hopped up.
The horny goat weed.
Yeah. So nobody wanted them. So I took like 100 free samples, and like throughout my entire like college career, like playing or like going to like track meets and stuff, I'm like single serve pack, throw it in the bag. Hey, it's game day, it's meet day. Slam that thing. And that's where it all started.
Yeah, I remember when Ghost kind of first started up. I couldn't tell you the exact year, but they used to sponsor some pretty heavy hitters and I don't know if they still do, like pretty heavy hitters in the
Fitness industry.
yeah, like the YouTube fitness industry specifically. Like Christian Guzman was one of their first like big.
He was like the first. Yeah.
Yeah, and then obviously Max
Tuning. I forgot
who else. Those are the main two I remember.
I believe I believe what was his name? Oh my god, he looked like a fighter. He was diced. And now I'm going to be like an asshole. I got to look this up. Let's see. Cuz I know they used to have a page on ghostlifestyle.com that had their athletes. I haven't been to their website in a little while, mainly because I haven't been ordering offline. I'm just like, let me go pick it up. Apparel merch, loyalty. My loyalty points still are my loyalty points are
Crazy.
deep in there. They're deep in there. The cereal's good. Yeah, Max Tuning's still in there. Rob Lipset, I remember buying his whiskey sour flavored pre-workout, which honestly everyone's gonna be like, ew. It was amazing. I don't know if Christian's still on here, to be honest.
I don't think so because I mean that was before he made 3D, right? I don't see him.
He was.
I don't know.
He was still. So he had 3D when he was sponsored by Ghost, but I think
was before they did energy drinks, probably, huh?
Yeah, it was like before they did energy drinks, and then now, like I know he's still friends with Dan and Ryan, like they're still tight, but like the weird thing is that 3D, like I don't know if anyone knows this, the partnership of 3D that dissolved back in the day. That's why they rebranded. They got, he split from his partners that didn't want anything to do with it. They wanted to go get invested in Prime, and they tried to do that while 3D was going on. And he spoke about this on the Don't Be Sour podcast. But now his new partner, lo and behold, is another energy drink monster out there. And the partner is none other than the entire company that is behind one of the greatest energy drinks that we've ever reviewed on the channel.
That's right.
Bum Energy. So that's why a lot of that profile has come through now. So I think it's just one of those things to where you don't want to, like, it's kind of weird to be with two companies at the same time. But yeah, he's not on their athlete list anymore, but they've obviously grown so much. Like the Stafford brothers are still, they're Australian. They used to have their grapefruit flavor because they have a grapefruit patch. And I think it might have been Raymond Crierto. I want to say, because that guy was just diced.
Yeah, the online coach.
Yeah, they sponsor some skateboarders now, which is sick. Let's go.
Yeah, I love how like it's interesting how they list them as athletes, and a lot of them are just like fitness YouTubers that.
Yeah,
I guess I mean can still be considered an athlete, but it's interesting.
Yeah, Peter Molina, though, let's go. And Cole Hosman. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, they had some heavy hitters. They were kind of like initially to me they were like the Gym Shark, but the supplement version almost. And now
Yeah,
they're like big and more mainstream, obviously.
it's a
But it
billion
was
dollar
that
company.
exactly. Yeah, it was them and like what was the other big like supplement company that sponsored a lot of people? My Protein was pretty big. I don't know if they still are,
My
especially like
protein was
in
like UK,
yeah, I was like
Europe.
that was in more the European market, European market. I know like Rob Lipset was with them. Matt does fitness. If you ever looked into that guy,
Matt does
dude's
fitness.
fucking jacked. Um, that whole kind of scene over there.
They brought a lot of people into it. It was really in America, like they were kind of the first like groundbreaker. And I'll say
Mhm.
groundbreaker because a lot of the times like supplement companies didn't work with like YouTubers. They worked with bodybuilders
Right.
because they wanted like this giant like juice person, whereas like Ghost really was like their, at least perception wise, their like original branding was, hey, we're
Lifestyle.
we're we're a lifestyle brand. Like
Yep.
we want you to be happy, be healthy. We want to support your workouts, but at the same time, like we're also the brand that is going to go to, the expos and stuff. And then afterwards, we're going to host a giant party because we're all going to get together and have fun. We're going to get DJs and music and stuff. And one of the greatest things that they ever did, and I don't care what anyone says, it's not the supplements, it's not the energy drinks, it's not the clothing, which all three are some of my I mean, as you can tell, I'm a bit of a fanboy, but the one thing that I love that they did was their YouTube series building the brand. I
Yep.
loved that. When it was just them, it'd be them in the office going through their lives, like working through products, making things, and you just see behind the scenes. Something like that is so sick, and it's like it had nothing to do with like them wanting to be like YouTube personalities or anything like that. It was
It was just
literally just
documentation, just
let's
documenting the process.
let's show everybody the journey that we're on. And
Yeah.
like everyone that watched that felt like they were part of it. I think stuff like that is so sick. It's like
Yeah.
watching it. It's like
I
watching the Dallas Cowboys documentary now, which I'm not a Cowboys fan. Hell yeah, Micah Parsons going to the Packers, but it's just stuff that you don't normally get to see. And if you like enjoy sports or fitness, you want to get engulfed in that.
exactly. I was just diving back into like barbell brigade and specifically like when people because like and
Loved
then
Barbell
like
Brigade.
yeah like specifically people that like have opened gyms that were kind of in that fitness influencer space like barbell brigade obviously like they had the gym and then they kind of became into the influencer space but then Bradley Martin whatever you want to say about him like obviously he's like very popular him with like zoo culture and then Russ Swole big in the powerlifting game. He had his gym corrupted strength. I think they were actually forced to shut it down because of something they couldn't renew the lease. But like stuff
Yeah.
like that, where like these like influencers, so called,
Hmm.
actually ended up opening like sick gyms based on the capital they were able to recruit accrue through the actual YouTube space, which is really cool.
And then these gyms ended up becoming, you know, Russ's is a weird situation, but I think honestly, like he could have vastly made that a massive gym just off of name recognition alone, where people would be like, "I'm going to go work out at Russ Swole's gym," especially if anyone was into
Right.
powerlifting.
Exactly. And I think his was just like because obviously like he's like a world class power lifter. And if you watch I was actually just watching the video of like where he kind of explained like why he had to shut stuff down. He's like I wanna like find another location, but like I'm coming into competitive season. I can't be dealing with all that right now. So like it's probably something he'll do in the future. But really cool to see like a lot of those people ended up doing something like that. Trying to think who else.
I mean, another one that was really cool. It's not necessarily the same thing, but like Charlie Coker
Yep. He
with
had
Inaka Power,
Inaka. Yep.
which it's really Inaka's really transformed. He's kind of turned it into a little bit of a supplement brand and like clothing brand and everything. But that started from belts and knee sleeves.
Exactly.
I still use like I lift
I
with my
have a
Inaka belt.
I have a pair of the knee sleeves. Yep. I remember they
It-
were like one of the only ones that did like a white knee sleeve, and I thought that was so
yes,
cool. And they were like pretty affordable. Like they're solid knee sleeves. The logo's sick.
I had the purple Inaka belt with the lever. His lever belt, honestly, I think I paid like at the time, like a lever belt used to be $350. And if you wanted like an SBD or something or an Inzer, they're nuts.
Mhm.
Inaka offered $120 belt, and everyone like complained, "Oh, it's probably cheap. It's probably cheap." So I was like, I took like a paycheck that I had, and I was like, I need a belt. Let me go buy this one and see what it's all about. I bought it, adjusted to my size. I've used it for it's got to be 8 years now. It's awesome. Nothing's beat up on it or anything. I had that and a pair of Reebok Nano 8s that I used for 8 years. And I mean, I put those things through the ringer. I beat them up, but I only wore them in the gym or like training, nothing else. I finally replaced the Reeboks now. Shout out TK. Um, helping your boy get hooked up with some Adidas Special trainers, which are great and they look impeccable. But I still use that belt. It's sitting on my home gym right now. It's sitting on the rack. Every time I do a heavy squat, heavy RDL or something, I'm locking that thing up. I love it.
Yeah, big fan of the Nanos too. Still have a pair of Reebok Nanos from late in high school that
Yeah.
are still like usable.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
They're
Everyone
sick.
likes the Metcons, but like the
The
Nano is like the original
yeah,
training shoe.
the Nanos walked so the Metcon could run.
Yes, exactly.
Quite
100%.
literally, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude. I mean, the YouTube personalities were those were some of the biggest things that like probably got a lot of people more into fitness. Now, there's some that are absolute losers. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I think we've hinted at this in past episodes. There's some people who they just want to be big on YouTube, like that's their goal. They don't really have much of a personality or anything to offer. It's likely that like you see them work out and you're like, there's you don't train that hard. How are you so like built up? That's when you get into like the dark side of like, oh yeah, they're probably on like some kind of like anabolic, whether it be a SARM, a testosterone, or if they're into like Dianabol, Anavar, whatever, or if they're just on like massive amounts of testosterone, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh well, I have a clothing brand now, and it's shitty clothing that they just pump out, and they're charging $80, $100 for a T-shirt, and then they open up a gym that is $150 for a day pass in LA.
Oh, it's that much. Holy
I
shit.
think it's that much.
Okay, yeah. I'm not hip. But you're right. I mean, that's where I really got into like fitness. Like it was like my friend's like bringing me to the like he's like that was like the cool thing. Like you started lifting like in middle school. I remember it was Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings. Um, and then some Saturdays we'd go to the Jessup gym, which talk about the Metcon and the Reebok Nano. I feel like Jessup gym walked so Iowa Strength could run in a sense, not to like that was the cool gym to go to before Iowa Strength really took off in our area. And you want to talk about day passes? This gym, so Jessup Gym. I know Chris alluded to it on. You all right there, Brian?
Ugh, I had some
Brian's hacking
phlegm.
up a lung.
Got it. I got it. I just had to mute
Okay,
myself.
okay. I know Chris alluded to it in when we had his episode, which definitely check that one out. That was definitely our longest episode, and I think one of our most insightful.
Yeah.
But Rex Reinhardt, the guy that owned Jessup Gym, they didn't do memberships because Rex didn't. He's like a legendary like powerlifter strongman in the state of Iowa. Um, he didn't really make. He didn't have that gym there to make money. He made most of his money on they taught classes. He had the supplements shop, and then really like they rented out like rental units and stuff like that. And then the gym was kind of just there because like he had a passion for you know gym culture and like wanting to serve the community. They didn't do memberships. You came in and you paid $1 to work out. A single fucking dollar, man.
That's
Like,
incredible.
and it's like anyone can scrape up $1. Like, and they were They had great equipment. Like the people there were incredible, like super nice. I know Rex was always there. It was Rex and his wife and his daughter. It was like a family business, and they would always be there working the front desk. You could buy a blender bottle there with like a Jessup Gym logo on it for $5. You could buy a T-shirt for $5. Like just like good old Midwest like mon pa style, but for a gym. But yeah, we would go to Jessup Gym on Saturdays. That was like the ritual. Um, and then on the way back, you're gonna know this, Brian. I'm just rambling to people that aren't from the Midwest, but we go to Quick Star and get either
Chocolate milk.
Glazers, chocolate milk, Glazers, or the cinnamon rolls that have like a inch of frosting layered on that
On
bad
the
boy.
top.
Yep, crush those post workout. Um, yeah, man, those were legendary days. But like I said, the fitness YouTube was really a big part of like how I got into fitness, and that was like kind of like before I even knew about the field of performance and strength and conditioning. It was like, okay, I want to be a personal trainer, and then I want to open my own gym, and that kind of morphed into, okay, I want to be a strength coach, and I still want to open my own facility at some point. Um, but dude, those people were, especially like Christian Guzman, Max Tuning. Like you said, there are people that just want to be big on YouTube, but then there are some people that are like they kind of may have appeared that way at the start, but they're like legit entrepreneurs now. Like I don't think anyone can argue with that. Like they have legit businesses, multiple businesses. Like obviously some of them have been better or worse than others, but like shit, like Christian Guzman has done some crazy shit. Max
Yeah.
Shooting as well. I'm trying to think who else. Like Russ Swole. Anyone that was really kind of surrounded by that alpha elite, I think it's almost
That
like kind of how all the people that like started PayPal all went on to do like separate things that ended up blowing up on their own. It's kind of like that with like Alpha Elite and the fitness scene.
I think so. Like, and you look at, we've kind of like glazed them a little bit, Glazer, but like Christian started just on YouTube, built. Now he owns an energy drink company, a clothing company, essentially Disneyland for anyone who likes fitness. And then as well, he's expanded other avenues. Like I know back in the day, they owned like rental strip mall properties between him and Max. He has like shipping and warehousing that he owns now to rent out to others. And then you look at, Max moved from Virginia to come over to Houston because he was like, that's where, he felt he was going to be pushed to continue to push his YouTube at the time. And then ended up starting Sour Strips, which just sold to Hershey's for over $100 million, and then he could take care of all the employees, his now wife and kid, and everything like that. You had Russ, who was involved with them and really built out his own brand. Shawley was over there, and then it kind of bleeds over, and you look at like, like I was just watching Don't Be Sour. I'm a big Joe Knows Best fan because it's a car guy. I gotta love my car guys, but his car YouTube has every video is 100 and is that you?
Yeah, I got some background noise from the TV. That's all. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Um, but freaking Joe, his cars videos have 100,000 views on them that he's built off that, and he built the website infrastructure for Alpha Elite, for Alpha Land, helped build out for Sour Strips, etc. All these guys like they flock to that because it's like birds of a feather flock together kind of shit. So that's kind of cool to think about that they'll come through and do all that.
Yeah, no, it's crazy how the stuff that it's not wasn't seen as a real career, and I'm not even gonna say like YouTube. I mean, it is a real career today, and like
Yeah.
that all stemmed from that, and now they're like seen as more like legitimate entrepreneurs, so to say. But
Yeah. But even then, it's like you look at like brand deals, you look at sponsorships. They were making full livings, paying their mortgages, paying their rent, their lifestyles, all of that from essentially just picking up a camera, talking to people, and just filming what they do. More so as vloggers than what we do as more so podcasters. I don't have the personality to be a vlogger. I think I'm funny, but I would also probably never. I got too much shame to hold a camera in public. Everyone's gonna think I'm an idiot. I'll go home and cry at night. But that it's a legitimate career that people can spawn stuff into. I think it's super interesting just to see, like, it's obviously way different in the landscape now with YouTube of, there's it's such a saturated thing, and everyone's out there with a camera wanting to do that because they've seen what it's like possible. But in 2015, 2016, everyone thought these guys were like crazy for doing that. And then
Yep,
it's
and now
slowly
it's
built out.
normal.
Yeah, now it's the normal thing. You're almost like weird for not doing that.
Yeah, I was just talking to one of our hitting coordinators down here, or that is down here currently. He lives in Miami. And I was talking to him like, hey, like he's from like Chicago area, like Midwest. It's like, hey, like, do you like it? Like, how's like living in Miami? He's like, oh, like I love it. Like it's interesting because I don't know if you've ever been to Miami. I've been there once. I have a friend that lives down there for a week. I went there for a week. He didn't live there for a week.
Yeah, he moved in and moved out. He was like, I don't want to be here anymore.
I realized I was sounded fucking stupid. Let me reset my fucking brain here. But he was basically like, dude, it's really nice. There is a lot of like, because that's like an influencer type of like city. When I think of like Miami, I think of that. Like Miami, I think of Vegas, shit like that. He's like, dude, there is a lot of that. There's a lot of like, there's people that actually have a lot of fucking money down there, and there's people that like are probably kind of faking it, and there's people that are like kind of just doing Instagram and like TikTok and making an actual like making a living. It's like, okay, it's like low key.
It's
At
kind of
first
fun.
I'm like, yeah. At first I'm like come on, but it's like, dude, it's not the
It,
worst kind of way to make a living, and like they're actually like they're living like a decent life in a really cool place. Um,
you can't hate him for
he's
that.
Yeah, it's interesting that like the people, you know, it's no different than like tech people flock to Silicon Valley or like the other places where tech is becoming more like I
Austin and
know like
Boston.
yeah, Austin, Boston, like I know like a lot of, different industries tend to
Kind of like conglomerate in certain areas because
yes, and
that's where there's more
yep,
opportunities.
yep, certain geographical areas. New York is for finance. And then like Miami, and I would say like Texas is big for like fitness influencing and stuff like that. California,
Yeah.
obviously, too, like LA,
Like
warmer
LA,
climates
stuff where
generally.
you're able to kind of be outside a lot more. A healthier lifestyle is typically like
Yep,
what's encouraged, or an
exactly.
active lifestyle, versus like Midwest. That's where you're going to find your farmers and
Hmm.
your owners of bars.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
super interesting.
there was a part of me that really wanted to do that. Like, when I was younger, I was like, that seems like the coolest life in the entire world. Like, and it wasn't. It had the crazy thing is like, when you're 16, 17, even 15, we watch those and we're like, I would love to do that. And it's like, you had no concept of like, oh, they're making a lot of money. It was just like, that's their job, is like they get to work out, and just because they're like filming themselves working out, they're like, we're just sitting there in our head like, that's the perfect life. And then we just don't have the courage to pick up a camera and go out there. And I think that's like kind of goes the same thing. I mean, there's a lot of parallels to that and a lot of other things too. Is just like, I'm not saying we would have been big or anything like that, but to the same extent of like, you never really chased it because it's like you didn't know if you would fail or not. Just go for it. I don't know. I'm not saying every kid needs to be an influencer, because I think a lot of kids are idiots and they don't have the personality for it. But like, if there is something that you truly, truly want to do, like, why not go for it? And I don't think there's not enough like encouragement to the right people to go for it. And unfortunately, like right now, in like a lot of the age of social media, like it's just the idiots who don't have shame that will get really big, because they'll put something controversial up or something stupid and it gets passed around, and then the traction gets hit on it with the way the algorithms work, versus someone who's probably a better person for it and just a better person in general that could get rewarded for doing something like that. you kind of think of someone like Nick Bear, and Nick Bear might get some hate for the hybrid athlete thing, but like he's a good person for social media because he's not a dickhead, he's not an asshole. He goes out there, he guy does his runs at 4:30 in the morning so he can go to his regular job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, his regular job is owning an extremely big supplement company, but
It
you know,
started in a dorm room.
it started in a dorm room and then he slowly built it up over time to what it is now. And people forget that. Same thing with Max. He started in a trap house reviewing a lever belt. Those are the people where they're a good personality for it because they're a regular human being. They weren't some extremely gifted person that just went out and had an opportunity that they could chase because someone else subsidized that. They just grinded it out.
Yeah. No, I think and I mean, maybe that's part of the reason we ended up starting this podcast in a way to kind of
Yeah.
rekindle that. I mean, we're 60 some episodes into a podcast about energy drinks. So maybe not all hope is lost, but I do think that that's a good point you make. Like, I listened to a podcast not super long ago about it was Brett Bartholomew's podcast. Shout out Art of Coaching. He's like, people get weird when they're taught when it comes to like selling shit, and like if you want to have a business or if you want to have like a following, if you're going to try to sell a product or service, you have to sell. And like I
Yeah.
just listen, it gets a bad connotation with like the slimy, stereotypical salesperson. But if you're not willing to do that, just know that the people that like are those slimy people are going to do that regardless. So you might as well throw your hand in the ring and try to be, that good light that gets into that arena, so to say.
Yeah. And it's going to happen regardless. So why not you? Why not be the better person doing it? Like you said. And the hard part is like the consumer has to do it. And sometimes you're going to like the people who are really good are going to feel uncomfortable doing that at least at first. And that's the people that you kind of want to trust, where they kind of come out and maybe they're, they get their first sponsorship or they have their own product that they want to push, and they're like, they kind of preface it with you with the, I don't really like sell much, but like this is something that I believe in. You can tell like when they say that first one, it's like, I don't feel right doing this, but this is the way to make money doing this, so I can keep doing it. Versus the girl that gets on there and tells you that these are the best leggings she's ever had in her entire world in her life, and then next week she's with a new company and these are the best leggings, and then next week she's with another. That's a lot different. Or like I just saw one on Instagram, and this one blew my mind. And maybe we're too into social media right now, but she got on there and talked about like she had like a house fire and all the things were like ruined, and she had 3 kids and she's trying to like get it all together. And at the very end of the video, she flips it into, and that's why I use this protein to like get a shake in, because during all this mess. And I'm like, that's kind of not the right way to do this. Like, you just told us
say
how
you're busy and like this tastes pretty good. Like,
yeah.
just save me the victim story.
You just kind of formulated your entire like, which don't get me wrong, tragedy, but you just talked about how hard it is for your kids and everything, and then you're like, but use my code to buy this protein because during all this, that's what I still have.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, like, I mean, you know a lot more about sales and all this stuff than I do, so feel free to just stop the idiot that's about to say this. I just listened to the audiobook 0 to 1, pretty well-known book.
Yeah.
0 to 1, it's about startups and just like how they're built. It's written by one of the guys that started PayPal, and it talked about like how sales kind of is that, like, people think it's like weird, like I don't want to sell, like the product should sell itself, but like sales isn't, the point that the book made was sales isn't just a sales pitch. Like, sales and marketing isn't meant to necessarily sell something on the spot. It's meant to plant that seed that will flourish into a sale or like a partnership or a relationship later on down the road. You're selling every day, whether you know it or not, when it comes to, when it comes to coaching, the way you act around the people you work with, your athletes, you're selling yourself as someone who you believe is the best person to put, your athletes in the best position to succeed as a performance coach. Same thing like with team builder. You guys don't know, you know, I'm sure like how do you know like how big or successful the company can get, but you're going to try to sow seeds by shaking hands at conferences, and like that company might not use your service right away, but maybe a few years down the road when they're looking for a solution and they remembered that you treated them well, or maybe you stay in touch, like you're always selling stuff like that and you're constantly being evaluated. So you have to think of it like that way. It's not just like, oh, I give a corny sales pitch and that's how I sell. No, it's how you carry yourself every day and, interact with people every day.
I would 100% agree on that. And like with Team Builder especially, this is the weird thing is like the product is the product, and it is a great product. Don't get me wrong. I'll tell anybody that until the day I die. I'd never want to work anywhere else after that. You know, but like what we really kind of sell is like the people behind the company. One of the things that we always tell everybody is like it's not just the product, it's people behind it. Like you have us always, whether it's from a customer support, a sales perspective, whatever, etc. But when we go to like a conference, we go to these conferences, we set up our booth, we talk to customers that are current potential customers, explain stuff when we let them, but it's never like, hey, let's get you to buy right now or anything like that. Like we're there to see people in the industry because, I would say I think it's like 85% of the company has been in the industry. So we know people. We go there to maintain our relationships with people, not from a sales perspective, but just because like that's who we are. And like, we'll go, see a CCA, for example, when we were there in Indianapolis, we went to the conference, talked to people during the day and everything. And then at night, we're like, hey, why don't you guys come out with us? We're going to go out and get drinks. And we're not talking about team builder. We're talking about whatever with these people, you know, met some old interns that were there, brought them with us. They brought some of their friends and just having conversations, hanging out and having a good time. That's what we do. That's who we are. And like, that's never going to change. But a lot of people like that. So they want to be around it and they want to work with us because that's the person that they want to work with, not just, oh, I give you money for a service. They know that they can come to us and talk to us later.
Yeah, that's a lot different than I think a lot of people think when they think about sales.
Yeah.
And like you said, like you believe in the product and the people behind it. That's probably a whole lot more natural than just trying to hard sell everyone the second you meet them.
Yeah. And I think that's like where a lot of people can go wrong is like they immediately go into like sales pitch, this, that, this is what we can offer. This is our price. We'll do this versus just like, you walk up to a team builder booth. We're like, hey, man, what's up? You ever heard about us? We let them ask us questions if that's what they're interested in. If we're not, then we're like, all right, well, what'd you go see at the conference? What are you up to later? What are you doing today? What do you got there? You want some free stuff? Like it's just like you gotta have like a genuine like authenticity to you. And we've talked about this multiple times on the podcast, whether that be coaching, whether that be in more of like a sales role or like in a corporate world or just as a person itself, like especially now, like with so much out there, it's really easy to sniff out inauthenticity or like like an ingenuine kind of person that people are able to really see and notice that right away. So when you aren't genuine, when you aren't authentic, it it's so like transparent that that's the case. It's really hard to be around that. You know, my grandfather always says like this one line that my parents hate when I say it because I get it from him, and my girlfriend hates it. Everybody hates it, but it's like he's like, you got two things: you got good looks and a magnetic personality. Like people want to be around that, and I don't know if I got the good looks, but the magnetic personality thing, like I'm able to like sweet talk people to being my friend, just to be around them. It was like the same thing with you, the same thing with like, Andrew, Gabe, Blakey, TK, Alex, all these guys that we bring on the podcast, Chris now, like it's people that you want to be around because you're more interested in them and wanting them to be around you versus anything that they can give you. Versus like, I really like this person. I want them to be involved in my life. I want to be involved in their lives. That's what like that's when like shit starts to click. And then that as that goes, like you'll have more opportunities because of that. But if you're not chasing the opportunity, but you're chasing the person because you want them to be around you, it's a lot different. And then that's when like cool things start to happen because you're willing to give more than you're willing to take. And some people might not have a lot to give at first, but what you can give them is your time, your effort. And like that's always a reciprocated thing. And I think if you like bringing that back to coaching, you might not have a lot to give to every athlete, but what you can give them is like your attention, your care, and show them that like you're just as invested in like their career that anyone else is or themselves. That goes so much. We've talked about before of like a bad program coached really well is worth so much more than a good program without coaching. Right. And that's where like the personality of you has to come through. But like when you care deeply about the athlete, you understand like who they are and you want them to succeed, not for yourself and a personal like gain, but like I want to be a part of your journey and I'm just happy about that. And I want to see you be as fruitful as possible. It's such a cliche thing, that everybody, wants to say that that's what they do. But if you can do that, there like magic happens in that realm. And that's when cool shit will really start to take off.
Yeah, that's a great point. I need to ask your grandpa what do you do if you don't have either of those things, the looks or the personality. But
I don't
I
know.
you might be fucked. Um, dude, that's a good point because we talk about that when it comes to coaching, like especially early on, like when you don't know shit. I mean, not that we, not
Not
that
that
I
we
know shit,
do.
not that I know shit about fuck now. You don't know shit about fuck. Not that we know anything now, but like when you're first getting started, especially like as a young intern, the things that don't take like skill and just take like effort and attention to detail, like trying to be personable, giving like, attention to detail, giving people your time and your effort, that can make up for a lot of that shit while you actually learn the skill and kind of like not like fake it till you make it, but that can be like a buffer like in the
It
meantime.
gives
Like
you it gives you that leeway zone.
exactly. Like if you know how to like connect with people and like just like show that you care about them, you can learn all the other skills, to be honest. Like it's like we said, like it's important to, there's a reason there's probably some of the smartest people when it comes to training are not coaching. Like there's a reason that researchers and like professors aren't coaches, because sometimes, not saying that those people aren't always personable, but you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you can't connect with people, that isn't really going to do you a whole lot versus someone that just like is super good with people, knows the basics about training and whatnot,
Hmm.
can have a lot more success. And you can always enhance that knowledge, and you can always like try to improve your people skills as well, but I think that's something that's a little bit more innate in a lot of people. Not to say that it can't be improved, but
Some people just have it naturally as like that's the environment they grew up in, whether their parents are like that, and they just kind of grew up around that situation where somebody is, a more magnetic personality, whatever
exactly.
you want to call it, they have that like they can play the game because that's just who they are. They talk about like being super charismatic. Like when you have that like natural like charisma to you, you're able to just talk to people and build that relationship super quick and super well to where you'll have that back and forth. You build that buffer, and then as those skills develop, you're able to go. And not to tie it back to that social media and those fitness influencers like we talked about like earlier in the show, but like we talked about like Christian and Max. Those are two really good examples of people who were able to connect with somebody without ever meeting them through a fucking camera. You know what I mean? Like if you and I were to go to like a fitness expo and they were there, we know so much about their lives from like them being able to, and their personalities and what they're doing, we're able to have a full conversation as if we knew them because they were able to connect with us through a camera. You give them the skill set of leading groups and the background knowledge extensively in the more performance side versus maybe like the aesthetic side of like training. They'd probably make really good coaches. Probably two different styles, of course. Max is probably going to be a little more goofy and joking and having personal relationships with the athletes and being able to talk to them. And that session's probably a little bit more different than like what Christian's is, whereas Christian's probably a little bit more like, we think of like Andrew, we think of Kel, think of, guys like that, where it's like, hey, we're going on the whistle, we're doing this versus, you know, think of Chris, I think of like Max would probably be a little more like Matt, where Matt's going to come in and he's like, chilled out. The session still runs, everyone's getting everything done. And he's kind of like cracking a joke to this kid while he's on his rest break. And then he's like going to check in on something and then going through here. It's that ability to connect with somebody that it's an underlying principle that is often forgotten about because it's not in a textbook. You need the prerequisite knowledge. You need the skill set. You need to know XYZ about exercise physiology, biomechanics, all this stuff. But there's never a chapter in the NSCA essentials. There's never a chapter in governing dynamics where fostering a relationship with the kids that you're working with is such an important thing. And in some situations, it's very tough. I was talking to one of my buddies who's at a high school. He's got 400 or 500 athletes in just the high school, not including his summer camps that he has to coach, as well as like the middle schoolers. So he's looking at 900 athletes in 35 to 40-minute sessions. That's a lot harder to like develop a personal relationship with every person. So you have to allocate the time wisely to do that. But, and then you have like some people who are on the private sector where maybe they have 10 clients. They can have a personal relationship in depth with every 10 clients. So it's a little bit easier, but like doing so in that, like you're able to get more and more and more out of them. And it's just one of those things that each situation is very context dependent on knowing which one is which and how to do that in each one. But, I think of Zach Elder, he hasn't been on the show. I want to get him on the show, but he's max strength, working the actual training side. And then as well as like more of the skill portions with like pitching and hitting. Every one of his athletes, whether they stay there for the summer and then they go back to school, whatever it is, they're able to just text him and talk to him about like what's going on. This is what I've been doing. What have you been up to? They could easily, just not come back once they grow out of a high school situation, but they do because they have that trust with him. They like him as their, I'll say trainer. I'm not big on trainer, but they also work on soft tissue stuff. He's doing all this. So in all capacities, they're comfortable going to him and want to come back and they can't wait. That's really what it's about. Whether you're in the private sector, you're in college, you're in high school, you're in the pros, when someone who can't wait to come back to you, you've won. Because then you have the kids who don't feel like I have to go hit my lift. It's like, all right, we got lift after this. We get to go see Zach in this case, whatever it might be. Everything's a lot easier once you can accomplish that. Look at Coach DeMarco. Every football player that he's coaching, they all are able to talk to him just about, hey, what'd you and the kids do this weekend? That, like, same thing. When I come in and if I'm, I got to travel, I'm gone for like a day or so. Someone's like, where were you? We missed you. If you're not there and someone doesn't notice, that's a problem. If you're there and you come back and someone's like, where were you? What were you doing? Like, why didn't you come? Like we miss you. We expected you to be here. We wanted to talk to you. We wanted you to train us, that kind of stuff. Really cool thing that allows like far more fruitful opportunities down the road. You never know what that opportunity is going to be, even if it's just, hey, we're going to have a really good session. That's a thing that like, is very invaluable and forgotten about.
Yeah, super. I don't think I can add anything to that that's going to make it better. To be honest with you, that is interesting though. Like when we talk about like personalities and demeanors, like that stuff is determined a lot by, early years of development, the
Yeah.
environment you grew up in. Like, in that sense, our coach is more so born than made in that aspect. Obviously, like, technical skills can be honed at any point
Improved.
in time. Um, but that's an interesting question to think about. Are coaches born rather so than made in terms of like personality? But at the other end of the spectrum, like, you see like various coaching styles, and like
Hmm.
people are more. Some people are more like, I don't even want to say like juice guy, because that's gotten a really bad rap, but like lead with like more of that, like lead from the front, like control the room, very like down, big voice. You're always going to know where they're at, versus like some people are more, just different coaching styles from different personalities,
Yeah.
um, that can both get to the same goal. So that, in that sense, like, maybe it's not, you don't feel like if you're not a certain personality, you're like doomed to
Not
never
fit.
be a good coach. It's more, I think that's more so like, the setting that you coach in could dictate that a little bit more. You'll probably
Yeah.
excel more in certain, if you're, some people are better at leading groups, some people are better at, if you want to get really deep, relationships with people, maybe you're going to be better in like a one-on-one setting, or like private sector personal training, stuff like that. um, yeah.
It's just one of those things. I have a really good question for you. Um, I was thinking about this one the other day. It's a two-parter here, so I want your thoughts on it though. But what do you think is the most like underrated sport to train? And then what do you think is one of the most like kind of like overrated or like overglazed that everyone wants to go do, and then they realize like it's not as fun as you thought?
Oof, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. It'd be now, remember, you got to take from my experience. I haven't. I
Yeah.
mean, we're both like, I would say, young in the game, but me even more so than you. Underrated, from, you could take this two ways in terms of like, how are you gonna, like, difficulty in like matching the demands of the actual sport, and like just, oh, like, people think this is like, when they have this team, they're like, oh, like, I get this sport, but then I also have to deal with this sport. And that can kind of, that honestly, that depends on the coach a lot, especially in the college game.
Yeah.
A good sport, like a sport coach, can make or break your relationship with that team in terms of like how you feel about how it's going. Underrated, dude. I feel like, preparing like a combat athlete, like mixed martial art, like MMA, super tough, because one, I think that's probably, I mean, shit, this could go into a discussion of what's the hardest sport. I
Yeah.
think MMA is probably one of the hardest, just because you have to learn so many different
7 different skill
skills.
sets. And that's
Exactly.
just that's just fighting styles, let alone aerobic capacity skills, anaerobic power.
Strategy, like the
It's
weight cutting, like it's a weight restriction sport. Like, there's so much shit that goes into that. I think I think that's would probably be one of the toughest sports to train, because you have to be in alignment. When you think of like a fight camp, people usually just do, what is it, 8 to 12 weeks for a camp leading up to a fight. It's similar
yeah.
to track in that aspect, where you have like a couple big competitions a year. A
And you
fighter's not
peak.
gonna, exactly, a fighter's probably gonna fight 2 to 3 times a year, depending
Yeah.
on where they're at in their career. The big names may only fight once to twice a year, versus like someone that's coming up, maybe you do 3 to 4. But it's not like you can do a fight every single month. It's just that taxing on your body. Um, so I think being in alignment, like when you do that, 8 to 12 week camp, it's like, it's fucking go time. You have to be in alignment with, however,
Everything.
yeah. And like, that's, talk about like, you can't have a siloed approach. Like, you're, as the strength coach, you probably working with, they might have a striking coach, they may have a grappling coach, you may be in charge of the conditioning, you may have a say in it, you may not have any say in it.
You're
They
probably
probably have
working
something with
hand in hand with the
nutrition.
nutrition.
They're probably having like a manual therapist, stuff like that. I think that is like a challenge for sure. And just like, dude, how do you, I mean, like, energy system development, the term mental toughness has gotten a bad rap, but like, dude, if you're about to go into a cage and like fight, fight another human as your job, like,
You
that
got to be a little bit
psychological
like,
makeup is different. That psychological makeup is different.
yeah.
So I think that's one that's really like underrated. I think a combat athlete, um, tactical side too. Like if you get into like okay, Navy SEALs. Like I'm talking like people that are in like special forces, like Navy SEALs, stuff like that.
Someone where like it's really do or die.
Exactly. Like it's bigger implications than like we win or lose. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot bigger implications. Those are the two that come to mind for me. In terms of underrated, or let's see, in terms of overrated, I guess. Let's see. In terms of like underrated from like a fun standpoint, some of those like and this could be really any like Olympic team. The sports that usually just get kind of like thrown to the side is like, oh, like
I was thinking like tennis. Like
yeah,
that's a
like tennises,
like those are fun teams to
soccer's.
train.
Yeah, like for me at Elon, like it was lacrosse. Like you
Saturday
can make
morning
a
soccer sessions.
rip. Yeah, like stuff like that. Like the smaller teams that sometimes don't get the attention that they deserve. You can
Hmm.
make that much bigger of an impact. Stuff like that is really cool. Like tennises, really. I mean, every and this is tough too because like especially if you're at a small school and you're understaffed and have 20 plus teams, it's tough to give that attention. But if you can find a way to go above and beyond what they're used to, you can make a really big impact with that stuff. And I mean, it's I don't blame coaches for thinking in that way because
At a
in an
certain
already
point, it's like you just have to like I don't want to say you have to prioritize, but you're sitting there like, all right, which one is the one that like the organization's placing the most emphasis on? I have 8 teams. Shit, what do I do now? Like it's not necessarily the coach's fault. It's just a product of the environment, and they end up looking like the bad guy because of the situation that they're placed in. But in a sense,
exactly.
like it's a shitty situation for everybody involved.
Well, and the fact that we can talk all day about like how the salaries aren't high
Yeah,
enough in an already like underpaid and overworked industry, people are going to flock to the sports that pay them the most, which is going to be in college football,
football,
men's
baseball,
basketball,
and baseball.
baseball.
Yep,
Yeah, sometimes women's basketball now it's getting more
yep,
popular, or director roles.
yep.
Maybe there's a few team. I don't know. There's maybe a few teams that are like, okay, maybe it's a non-football. Hockey is obviously big too. Maybe if you're at a non-football D1 and you have a really good soccer team, they're looking for someone specifically for men's or women's soccer. But
Or like a
those
lacrosse
sports,
team.
yeah, like those sports usually aren't. You're not going there to just work with that sport, and you're probably not making a lot of money, and you're probably trying to get into, okay, I want to be with football, and I'm not even sure like it's something to think about. Do people pick the sports they want to get into because they actually want to get into them, or just because they're like, okay, I like working with these smaller Olympic teams, but like I can't just make 45, 50K for my entire life. Like that's not what I want. Not saying
Yeah,
there's anything wrong with that, but like I need to get to one of the big three so that I can actually like make this sustainable for me. So it's not necessarily, it's more of a flaw of
the
the
system
system.
than it is anybody like personally.
Exactly. And like I don't shit, I don't have a solution for that right now. There's definitely we could brainstorm ideas on that, but um in terms of overrated, man, it's tough to say like overrated because like I feel like this is just such a cool job to have. And like I
Yeah,
consider myself like lucky to be able to be in this field. I don't know, man. Like I think no, it's not so much like overrated as like you maybe do it for the wrong reasons. Like you just get into football because you want the status, or you just want to get into football just because you feel like you have to make that money. Because like, dude, working with football to me is fucking sick. Like
it's
that's being a
fun.
waiter. Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to say football is overrated because it's not to me. Um,
But there's a lot of downsides depending on what level you're at. There's a lot of downsides to it, especially you get up to that like P4 level where it's kind of do or die with your wins or your job depend like your livelihood depends on it. Like Some of these dudes are spending 16 hours a day in an office just because they feel like they have to justify the position just in case they lose.
Yeah, I don't think it's more. I don't think it's as much as like the sport itself is overrated because I don't think any sport like being able to coach is like such a like I said, it's such like a privileged job. Like it's not necessary to move the human race forward like it is like a doctor or something like
Yeah,
that. But when it comes down to the need to like justify the position by doing stuff that's like I'm not even gonna say unreasonable, but like you feel you feel the need to stay at the office for X amount of hours, whether you're actually getting work done or not, and taking or like prioritizing that over your family when you don't necessarily want to, but you feel like you
yeah,
have to. I think that's more so the reason, not that the sport itself is overrated.
that's fair.
What about you?
Underrated,
Underrated, overrated?
underrated. Like I think like when you think of like I think you hit the nail on the head for like combat sports or like tactical positions in like that Navy SEAL training. Like just the amount of like sheer like true work that goes into like some of those developments. I completely agree with you. And then when I think of like a natural, like I don't want to say natural, but like a more like conventional team sport athlete, like you see like a tennis or something like that, those are super underrated. Um, and that's just based off of my experience with like some of those teams, like you said, like not previously being like cared for or like prioritized within some departments. And then you get there and these kids are just as hungry, if not maybe more, because they want someone to put that much effort into them and have that opportunity. You know, I've seen, firsthand some of these like, women's tennis team here at Elon, they train hard and they are fun and to be around that environment. You look at like soccer's, previously either at other schools or organizations I've been to, like volleyball, like those are fun teams to be around and there's like some cool stuff can happen. So I think those are like just the Olympic sports in general are also just an underrated, at least in the NCAA, to train. Overrated, and I'm gonna say this, like I think basketball is overrated. Um, and I've probably made some points on this before, but for the most part, like a lot of people get into basketball because it's a big sport. You know, they maybe have dreams of like being a strength coach in the NBA, whatever it might be. But if you really think about like what that day to day looks like, there's not enough room. There's not a lot of room for like physical development. So your role as a sports performance coach, you're probably not in the weight room that much. A lot of their conditioning is done via practice or on the court. You don't play as big of a role because it's a very skill dependent sport. That's number one. Number two, because of that, you know, you're probably not getting a big chance to like, if you're a numbers person, you're probably not putting up big numbers in the weight room. Like your job is more so like get them healthy enough to make it through some stuff. The weight room's not necessarily been a priority for them in their lives. As basketball players, a huge ton. Maybe to the extent of like they want to go get a pump. Like they're not probably getting in there, hitting a ton of heavy squats. Um, and then the big piece of that though is like travel. You can have a great plan where you're going to be able to do all that. Well, that's awesome, but you got a midweek game that you got to fly across the country floor. Your weekends are full. You're never home. You're never doing anything. You're always traveling. You're always having to mitigate your entire plan. It's a little bit overrated in the sense of everybody thinks you're going to go in there and it's going to be this ideal situation because one person at the top has an ideal situation, and then you get into the mix and you're like, this is nothing like what I thought. And I think a lot of people, like you'd mentioned, like kind of get into it for the wrong reasons, for the ego or for the money, because it's one of the higher paid positions in like sports performance. And a lot of people, I think, kind of get there and they'll go, it's not that great. Um, and they ended up, and one of the worst ones I see is like they'll give like a basketball position to a director. And that's not because I don't think that a basketball strength coach can be a director. It's just, hey, those are very two high demand things going together. Um, it's a little bit easier in football because you play, depending on the level, it's 11 games and then postseason maybe. and then it's done, you can have all of your director responsibilities. Basketball's a long season. It's a very demanding travel schedule. It's a very involved travel schedule as well. It's hard to be doing the duties of a director and being there to push the department forward while also being the strength coach for a team in that is that demanding and that involved and with a long season. I think that's overrated. And that's a personal opinion, and you can say whatever you want, but it is what it is. I think a lot of people don't understand like what goes into that, and they're not really prepared for it going into it. Um, and something can be said too a little bit for baseball in the same context. There is probably a higher emphasis placed on weight room. Mass moves mass when it comes to baseball. Like you want to be a big hitter, you got to be strong. You got to have that body mass. You know, the speed is a little bit more stretched in baseball than it is necessarily in basketball on a condensed court. You know, stuff like that is a little bit like has to be considered. Um, so that's where I would probably go for like the overrated side. Um, Underrated side note, rugby. Not a lot of people have like a rugby team, especially within the NCAA, but they're as a sport very forward thinking, high emphasis placed on physical preparation, whether that be weight room, sprinting, strength and conditioning, agility, tackling prep. They're also very, very thoughtful and mindful of the way that stuff is periodized from the sport coach perception, to where, they use a lot of the game models from, professional soccer and tactical periodization to make sure everything matches up so they're prepared. I think they're ahead of the ball game on that. Um, Especially thinking, in such like a traditional, like, quote unquote meathead sport, very similar to football in the aspect of its full body contact, and typically you would associate that with a lot of like tradition and traditional thought concepts. A lot of rugby teams break the mold on that and are very, very, I guess, like scientifically based practices within what they do. In, hey, this worked, but like it could be a lot better. Why can it be a lot better? Let's break it down. Let's improve it. So that continuous improvement is at least from like my perception, like really thoughtful in rugby. So you get some of that cool, and then it's like the difference of like a rugby sevens versus maybe like the traditional team. The space is different because the player allotment is different on the field. So like it's different demands. So like you get that like creativity of having to change that. You know, those are cool things. um, and as a coach, like that's super underrated to like get into a position like that to where you don't necessarily have like this big like roadmap of like, hey, typically, you do this and then you do this and then you do this, and this has always been the way it's been. So you just kind of have to plug in and play. It's like, hey, you got to create the roadmap. So that's a really cool opportunity, and it's it ain't like they're not training hard. um, so you always have that like that big effort placed emphasis on there from them. Those would probably be like my picks. There you go.
Yeah, I think another one that I think is underrated, and it's not so as much like it's more from like a coach development perspective, and this is something that I've kind of changed my mind on since I came down here last year, and that's like working with younger athletes in general, just like teaching you how to actually coach and communicate. And obviously, it's different for me because like it's language barrier too, but like um, being able to like I was talking the same guy that is was the coordinator I was talking about earlier. Like he started his career down here, and he's like to asking me some stuff like, "Oh, how long you been down here? How you liking this and that?" And he's like, "Yeah, dude, like it's like it teaches you how to actually coach. Like it's difficult, but like, dude, if you can do it here, you can do it anywhere." And I think like people want to work with the high level college athlete, they want to work with the pro athlete, and that's all fine and good. Um, but I think there's low hanging fruit in being able to teach someone that has like little like maybe even isn't like a very good athlete, and like being able to actually like teach, because I mean coaching is teaching by the end of the day.
Yeah.
actually coach and teach someone that's like, a teenager or even like, middle school, high school, younger kids that like, can you simplify, the complex concepts that you learned into something super simple and easy to understand? I think there's a lot of development to be had as a coach from teaching like a younger population, whether that's high school or like the stuff that like, you know, Jeremy Frisch does with his like long-term athletic development center, stuff like that. That's like more like 6 to 12 year olds. I think that's something that gets overlooked in the field.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And there's one part though that I want to pinpoint is like the language barrier one. That's another one too that people often forget. Like if you can coach like through a language barrier, give me that coach 10 times out of 10. Because they're able to communicate effectively, even more so with like the obstacle of not even speaking the same language. Um, you and I have like I don't have as many like non-traditional English speakers as you, but I've got about five that English is not their first language, so you have to like maneuver around that. And some of them, obviously, the scale tips towards one direction. Obviously, if they're more fluent or less fluent, so working with that and thinking creatively around stuff to use your body, demo, or like just kind of maneuver somebody else into their positions. Um, that's something that is it's a very underrated piece of development of, hey, you can't just rely on telling somebody to go lower. You have to be able to say like or demo it on yourself and be able to point and communicate non-verbally, or picking up an additional language and starting to speak a little bit more fluently, at least good enough to communicate in small capacities. That one was huge. Having Spanish speaking athletes, having German athletes, having you know Eastern Slavic countries, whatever it may be, being able to do that is like your coordinator said, man. If you can do it there, you can do it anywhere, and it's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I think it's a good like kick in the ass too. Like you never know how
You think you
much
got
you
shit figured out?
exactly. You'll humble your ass real quick. Like you never know like how much more like it just opens up like, oh wow, there's like so much more you can learn until like the thing that you use the most to communicate with people is just like taken away from you. And you have to like start over and like while you're
you
learning the language, you gotta like figure out how to do it without. And this like that's
you go back
not
to intern
every
level.
exactly like it's good. And like some people will, I mean shit, that was me. Like I would have never experienced that if I hadn't taken this job. And like some people will like probably never have to go through that. Not saying that like that's a good or a bad thing, but like it's a different challenge. And like you may not, it's weird because it's like you're not limited by like your knowledge, you're limited by your communication, and that
Yeah,
becomes like the biggest lever to pull. Like you don't need to learn necessarily, you need to focus on necessarily learning more about like methods and actual like training. You need to learn how to like communicate better, and that's something that if you can improve that, that's something that will improve every other part of your life too, whether that's like if you're business negotiations, whatnot, trying to negotiate a raise, interviews, stuff like that. When you go to like conferences, just being like a better communicator overall, like I said, is going to trump any, has the potential to trump any technical skill
oh,
in
a
this
hundred
industry.
percent, 100%. And it's such a difficult thing that people don't realize it in that point in time until you're in the situation. You're like, oh man, I got to figure this out.
Yeah. And like, I think it's like Richard Feynman, the physicist, says like if you can't explain it to like a 6 year old, you don't actually know it. And that's like the biggest thing of like to actually like understand something, you have to be able to teach it, and you have
Mm-hmm.
to be able to teach it to people that have a much less like just assume that their knowledge base about like training is zero. And I think that's sometimes that we struggle as coaches, and get frustrated is because we assume, this is actually like there's a bias. What is it called? It's called like the curse of knowledge, and it's
Mm-hmm.
basically like you assume that people are kind of on your same level of like baseline knowledge, when in fact a lot of times they aren't. Especially when talking to athletes, like we assume that they're good athletes, like they're good athletes, but they don't really know a lot about how to actually like train and like training. I think that's a misconception when people really start getting into the field. You have to be able to simplify those concepts and like talk to them like they're like a 6 year old to maybe get them to understand and get on your level.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't teach it, like, do you really know it as well as you think you do?
Oh, 100%. And it's like you think you have this opportunity to just, you know, essentially kind of run with it. And then all of a sudden you get this like kind of roadblock where it's going to put you like in a pause and you have to like actively think about it not being the same thing that you thought you were getting into. And now it's the same thing we've talked about. Like, you get in there and like, how far away is plan A from plan B? How far away is plan B away from plan C? And it's like, well, how can I walk this back to get what I need to get done? But now I have this new barrier that isn't necessarily a physical limitation, but a communication aspect. And how do I get there? Because it's going to take me now an additional 5 minutes possibly for each set or for each exercise to communicate effectively to get there. What's my bare minimum I can do? Or how do I walk it back to where it may be something that is a little bit more familiar for them where they can get this?
Yeah, and for me, it's like it changes the way that I've like programmed too, and changes the way that I run things because it's okay. I have to think about like one, can I actually like explain this? Two, you obviously everywhere that you work, you should think of like weight room flow, the equipment, how the session is going to flow, but that can change how you select exercises and stuff like that based on one, knowing your population, and two, like knowing for me, like, okay, like I can program stuff and do more stuff this year than I could last year because I know how to communicate better. I can speak a little bit more and I'm more confident in it versus like last year. And it was weird because like I was used to just being like, okay, I know how to explain all this stuff. And then you kind of feel like, oh, like, but then you realize it's better to do basic shit that you still know that works and be able to communicate it well rather than to try to get fancy and then have it done, shittily because you don't
Mm-hmm.
know how to communicate it and they don't really or get confused and don't know what's going on. So you have to think about that kind of stuff. You can't just throw like, okay, like you said, bad program coached really well, probably better than, you know, a good, the perfect program, quote unquote, but don't know how to communicate stuff. Like, all right, just go do it.
I
And
know.
just
And it's,
assuming that they know what they're assuming they know that don't assume that they know like what you want out of it. That's like why you have a job in the first place.
yeah. And it learns you a lesson. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, yeah, that's why you have a job in the first place.
Yep. Oh. Did you have anything that you wanted to that you had that you felt was the
Dude,
right thing?
I had like three topics written down. We didn't get to any of them, but that's fine because what we talked about was way better. Did you ask your question about the? No, that was the question that you thought would get some people heated.
Yeah.
Underrated, yeah. No, dude, basketball is an overrated sport. Will definitely get some people fired up because, dude, like even I have like, when I was, I mean, not that like I don't consider myself like a baseball guy just because I only work with baseball, but like I thought like, oh, like basketball is cool. I'm a big basketball fan, and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people, some of the more well known. I mean, the well known coaches typically tend to be big schools, baseball, basketball, football, anyway. But like, there's some people that are big in the basketball world that, think about like Daniel Bove and like Corey Schlesinger that have been at the NBA level and have put out
Mm-hmm.
like, put out like courses, books, stuff like that. But you make a lot of good points. And that's kind of how I don't want to say that's how I feel because I don't really know, but obviously baseball has the affiliate system and it's a grind to get through. For our guys down here, there's 7 different levels from between here and then you get to the big leagues. The closer you get to the big leagues, the more obviously development should never stop. You should always try to be developing, get people better, but the emphasis is more on winning
Yeah.
because you're also playing 162 games in the big leagues versus down here we play 60 and then we play a little bit of it in the fall league. So we're playing way less than that. Like less than, we're probably playing half as many games. We're not traveling. I like down here that the focus is really on physical development. And I don't know, obviously, and it's interesting when like I talk to Matt, he's at the opposite end of the spectrum. He's in the big leagues with the Red Sox. That looks a lot different than down here with the travel. Obviously, people, I'm working with guys that are 17. He's working with guys that are in their, late 20s and 30s. Those guys have been through a lot more. That looks a lot different.
Yeah.
And I think that's just one thing. It's a different challenge. That job looks different. It's a different that takes a different type of coach, that takes a different set of skills. But I like down here that that's kind of the focus. I don't know, maybe I'll get to that point where I'm at a higher level and I'm like, this is cool, but for different reasons. But like you said, it's a lot more, especially in pro sports when you think about all the travel, or even in high level like college basketball where there's a lot of travel. Your job looks a lot different than like say a rugby or a football where the weight room plays a critical role in performance. Like you have to be like it's better to be a physical unit versus like basketball. It's like, okay, like you want to be athletic, but again, it's a lot of skill and a lot of like, okay, can we stay fresh? It looks a lot different. So that's one thing that I really appreciate about not even just like my job down there, but I think like the Cubs in general is keeping in mind that development is always has a role. It's just to varying extents and developing different things. Obviously, if you stop developing, then like, what's the point of coaches in the first place?
Yeah. Oh, such a good one. I love it.
Dude. Yeah, you got a rating for that bad boy?
I
This is
do.
gonna be tough.
It's very, very good. Obviously, can look sick. It looks like a little bit more like old school, like soda shop style. I love like the cream coloring with like the maroon for raspberry, that raspberry color. The ice cream bar just being on there, that's so sick. Um, it's going to be a high rating. It's not the highest it's ever been, but I'm going 8.8.
Okay, that's really solid.
8.8. I mean, it's very solid. The price is the same typical pricing. It's obviously the same ingredients. Can looks great. Flavor's impeccable. The only hard part right now is whilst being, it's like the iced tea lemonade from Ghost. I got two of them. I drank two of them right away, and I thought it was just going to be able to go get more. They're sold out everywhere. They're really hard to get a hold of right now. I think as the initial hype comes down and all the new products come in, they'll be more consistent in following. This is going to be one that you can just grab and you're like, that one sounds really good today. You know what I mean? It's not going to be like I don't know if it's going to hit right. You just grab it. You just grab that thing. Just grab that can and twist it.
No, that's super solid. Yeah, obviously, guys, appreciate you tuning into the show. Head over to bevboys.com if you want to buy yourself a t-shirt or a hat. We are working on some other stuff for the shop if you want to support the boys. Instagram at bevboys.tv, past, future, present clips of episodes, as well as our own personal Instagram accounts that are collaborated with that. French_fit40 for me on Instagram. Training content, Bevboys content, stuff like that. Brian, Instagram is
BSZUTKOWSKI, B Shakuski. Super hard to spell, but now that we're back in season, or back on campus with a lot of my personal athletes with the track and field team, expect to see a lot more track and field content, obviously at practices as well as the weight room. A lot of cool thoughts. Of course, Bev Boys content. This is our pride and joy. We love this every week, so we always like to post those clips. French does a great job getting us some cool ones, so of course. And we will have some cool guests coming on very, very soon in the next couple of weeks here. I've got one lined up who will be a banger. He's, not to tell everybody and get everybody juiced up, but we have a guy who had a very unconventional path, and he's going to talk about how he did that, going from an intern to a director. in one job. So
yeah, stay tuned, guys. We got some exciting things in the works. But yeah, leave us a good review on Apple Podcast. Recommend it to a friend if you did like it, or don't if you didn't. But probably didn't get to this point if you didn't like it. So
if you didn't like it, share it to them. Tell them why you didn't like it, so they can share it to somebody else and tell them why they didn't like it.
exactly, any publicity is good publicity as at this point. So
Yep.
appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.